Okay. Okay, great.
Okay.
So let me just quickly introduce the two ladies who are talking to us tonight, Debbie Peterson and Wendy Bright-Fallon. They're national board certified health and wellness coaches, and the mission of their organization is to make the world a healthier place. Take it away, guys.
Thank you so much for having us. My name is Wendy.
And I'm Debbie.
And as you did say, we're national board certified. We have a business, brick and mortar business here in Red Bank. And we also support people virtually as well. So we always want to make sure people know there's access. The world is changing and so are we.
Yeah. So just to let you know what being a national board certified health and wellness coach is, and differentiate ourselves from nutritionists and dietitians, because that's where usually people are saying, well, what do you do?
Yeah.
Because we do give advice and suggestions about nutrition and food, but that's not all we do. So we're on the coaching side of giving advice and suggestions. We walk side by side with our clients in helping them make their best choices for their health. And we do that through what we call our 5 foundations of health. And that is first one being food and nutrition, then sleep, then movement, then mindset, and then connection. And so the difference between us and dietitians and nutritionists is that they are really experts on the science of nutrition. They know all of the sciencey stuff that goes into macronutrients and micronutrients. And if you have this condition, this is the kind of food you need to eat and how much you need to eat and all that stuff. We don't do that.
We'll pitch it to a nutritionist if someone really wants to be handed a meal plan, they would probably go to someone else.
Let me just jump in and say that it is more clinical. If people want wellness information, I think is what you're going to say, they go to you. If they want to know, if they want lifestyle information about how to incorporate the right foods, would you say that would be what you do as opposed to giving any kind of clinical?
Exactly. We don't treat or diagnose. Exactly.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. And I think we're all still trying to learn the boundaries and learn when to, refer to each other. And this is a beautiful new 20-year young field, and it's really fascinating. We're steeped in it. We love what we do, both second careers, and there are a lot of people who are suffering needlessly, and we're helping to be part of the wellness community. We aren't the one-stop shop. We're part of a community of people who are all trying to raise the bar of wellness, and fermentation is one sliver of it.
That's right. That's right. We really do work with people on their habits and their lifestyle choices and how they incorporate that into making better choices in their life about wellness and health. It's really what it's all about.
Yeah. So. And we have been podcasting for several years now, and that's all our gift to the community. So please jump on there and find us at Nourish Noshes. And we've written a cookbook. We just want to let everybody know. It's called Nourish, a community-supported cookbook. We've got over 140 recipes. It's all color photographed recipes. And it was a community event where we got like-minded thought leaders and foodies and other practitioners to donate recipes to really get people playing with their food and getting in the kitchen and doing some self-nourishment. So That was a fun project, and that's how we became Nourish coaches.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. We worked so well together, we decided to be partners.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and we're working on a cookbook right now too, which is going to include fermented vegetables.
Yeah.
So.
And one last bit, just so people know who we are, a little bit more about what we do. We do one-on-one coaching, and we do group coaching as well. And we do have a 6-week program coming up in April. So if people are looking for a spring reset and to get to know us a little bit, that 6-week program is kind of a good spot. So.
Yeah.
we really are happy to be sharing with you today. So here's our brief outline, what we're going to go over tonight in the next 45 minutes or so. And we'll be open to Q&A. So feel free to put a question in the box or just raise your hand.
Yep.
So let's talk about what is fermented defined. Let's get the definition.
Yes.
Right off the bat.
Because some people don't know exactly what it is. You know, as a part, people think of pickling and fermenting, same thing, but which we're going to describe soon. But
yeah,
really, fermented vegetables have been preserved through this process that converts sugars and carbohydrates into acids, also converting them into gases or alcohol. And this is done by bacteria or by yeasts or by fungi. And it preserves the vegetables, and it also increases their nutritional value and changes their flavor. So that's really what fermented vegetables are. And some examples are kimchi that you've heard of, perhaps sauerkraut. Most of us have heard of pickles, obviously, but it's a lot more than that too. So we process the vegetables, slice them, dice them, shred them, whatever, and we put them in a brine that's salt water. And we coat them with this mixture of salt water, and sometimes you can add spices or herbs or whatever you would like. The salt, the brine helps draw out the water from the vegetables, and it creates an anaerobic environment which has where the beneficial bacteria can thrive. So over time, this bacteria breaks down all the sugars in the vegetables, and this produces lactic acid, which lowers the pH of the brine and creates this acidic environment that inhibits any growth of bacteria that we don't want. And the result is the fermentation, which is a tangy, sour, and even effervescent kind of flavor, so that they can be eaten either on their own, or some people put them in salads, some people put them in sandwiches. You can put them wherever you want.
I might even offer that it could be for some people an acquired taste. So if you've tasted it and not been completely thrilled, please try again.
Yes.
Yeah. Try with a different brand or a different vegetable or
different spices or
yep. Mix it up, play around.
Yep. The great thing about fermented vegetables is most of them are really rich in probiotics. And as you may know, that's a beneficial bacteria that helps us improve our digestion and boost immunity and reduce inflammation. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. And they also have a bunch of vitamins and minerals and everything else. So fermented vegetables are absolutely a wonderful thing to add to your diet if you're trying to up your game and your wellness.
Yeah. There are just a couple of buying prepared fermented vegetables that we wanted to make sure we talk about. And the first one is to ensure that it's all whole food ingredients on the label. Look at the ingredients, read them, know them. True fermented foods should have no sugar in them at all. They also should not have any preservatives to keep a long shelf life or anything like that. Real food goes bad. Even fermented food can end up spoiling. So one of the other things that people might misunderstand is that true fermented foods are not cooked. So when you pasteurize them, you're cooking them, and a lot of people call them dead fermented foods. So those are a couple of things to keep in mind.
Okay. So there are a few types of fermentation. And what we're going to be demonstrating tonight is lactic acid fermentation. And that's with yeast strains and bacteria that convert starches to sugars, like I said, but it converts it into lactic acid. And as we said, no heat is used at all. And lactic acid bacteria are vital to producing and preserving vegetables and foods. And that's where we get all of the lactic acid things like the sauerkraut, the pickles, the kimchi, even yogurt and sourdough bread are all using lactic acid. The second kind is ethanol fermentation, which is alcohol fermentation.
That's wine and beer.
Yep. So this is where yeast breaks starches down into alcohol and carbon dioxide. And so alcoholic fermentation produces wine and beer. So that's been around for ages. I mean, fermentation has been around for ages, but actually I'm pretty sure that alcohol was one of the very first fermentations.
That's interesting.
Just to interrupt, we had a presentation on this, and give thanks to the Babylonians because so much comes from them. They actually had some of the first fermented beverages, honey beverages and things like that. So yeah, it's been around for thousands of years.
Yes. So we are going to answer that question about how long you can keep fermented vegetables. So that'll come up in a little bit.
Just wanted to put it on your radar. That's all.
Yep, yeah, for sure. The third kind of fermentation is acetic acid fermentation. That's where you get vinegars. So that's where starches and sugars from grains and fruit ferment into some vinegar, some sour tasting vinegars, and that's apple cider vinegar and kombucha as well.
Yeah. Anybody tried kombucha here? Yeah, probably.
Yeah, yum,
probably
yum.
Everybody. It really is delicious. All right, so the question about fermenting and pickling, and the main difference is that pickling actually involves the addition of an acidic solution to preserve the food. Fermenting is a natural fermentation process that occurs through that beneficial bacteria and yeast. So pickled foods retain their texture and their flavor, and fermented foods get a little bit different texture and a little bit different flavor. And so in this chart, you can see a little bit of the differences. And yes, they're both preserved. One uses vinegar, that's the pickling. The pickling is in the fridge. The fermenting does not have to be in the refrigerator. Fermenting has the benefit of the probiotics, which is for so many people really the nutritional boost that everybody's looking for. And it does take a slower process than pickling. So we're going to talk about some of the health benefits, and we could probably talk about this for a really long time. This is a little bit more dense slide, but the lactobacillus bacteria converts sugar into lactic acid via this fermentation process. And lactic acid it's a natural preservative. So it's actually inhibiting harmful bacteria. It's promoting healthy gut microbiome. These are probiotic foods. Pickling is not a probiotic food, which is a main difference. It's really increasing the vitamins, the enzyme levels. It's more easily digested for many people. So if people are having struggles with digestion, that they can move to fermentation. I mean, it depends on your body. That's one thing that we talk about all the time. Just because something is supposed to have health benefits and is supposed to be good for you, we always need to go to our own body and do our own personal experiment. So we often suggest people to try small bits at a time. More isn't always better,
right?
Especially in the beginning when you're introducing something new into your body. I know when, kale became the sweet darling child for everybody, and then everybody started overdosing on kale, and we can overdose on cruciferous vegetables and anything. We really can. So, yeah, where did I leave off? For those folks who choose to be vegan, the bacteria process really aids in boosting the body to actually create additional nutrients in the gut. And so many of the B vitamins that many people, not just vegans, are needing come from fermentation. Let's see, what else have I kind of skipped around on? So apple cider vinegar too contains bacteria from raw or live, but doesn't make a probiotic? That's a question that some people have inquired about. And only a handful of bacteria and yeasts have really earned the title thanks to the human health. It really is a nutritional powerhouse for us,
Right.
and provides a lot of medicinal value. So it helps support our immune system. It helps reduce inflammation in the body, and it helps get these nutrients more available and absorbing for us. Did I miss anything?
No, I mean, basically it really ups your game. Your microbiome is very happy to have fermented foods in your body. Big time.
So let's talk about some instructions. It's fun. It's so funny. I have to like squeal on myself with this one. I buy fermented foods most often. I used to make some. Debbie makes them more often. So just being
Now I don't feel so bad.
yeah, just by in being invited, thank you, to do this, I'm truly inspired to get back into the kitchen and do some more personal fermentation, because while this is delicious, and I'm not affiliated with this brand or anything, but these are all real whole food ingredients. But this one jar was nearly $11. So it's like, yikes. Debbie probably made this jar for like $2.
For not even
$2. So I'm just throwing it out there that I'm learning too.
Yeah.
And I want to jump back in the kitchen and do this. Okay, what kind of easy instructions?
Yeah, it's so simple. It's so simple to make fermented vegetables. You don't have to be a chef or even an experienced cook. It's really ridiculously easy. I mean, and I make them often. I have this jar of daikon radish that I made probably last month. This is in my refrigerator, and I just dip it in, put it in salads here and there. And I also have, which we're going to show you in a little bit too, this is some green beans and carrots that I made 2 days ago. So these have not even gone into cold storage yet, but I'm going to show you them a little bit later. We're going to open those up. But the equipment that you need, as you can see, obviously jars, but a knife. Most people have knives. Mandolin. If you have a mandolin, wonderful. Then you can make all different little matchstick things and all the different slices and all kinds of other things, or a food processor. But really, you just need a knife and a cutting board.
I really like my food processor though. You can whiz them fast.
Right. Unrefined sea salt. And again, we're going to show you how to do it here. And filtered water, which we also have. Now, just a note on water. Filtered water is important. Tap water, it's got a bunch of minerals and chemicals perhaps in it that probably would inhibit the fermentation process, to be honest. So getting some good filtered water, not stored in little plastic bottles. So really quality water is what we're looking at. The better the water, the better the ferment. So really super, super important. Same with the salt. You want quality salt. If you're buying salt at the source, sea salt is my favorite, and that's the best kind of salt to use for this. It's unrefined. We don't want iodized salt either. So it's natural sea salt is the best kind of salt to use. And I also said a jar. So I use ball jars mostly. So this is one of the ball jar sizes that I like to use most. And there's also, which you can but don't have to use, are weights. So I bought these weights, yep, online, and they're made out of glass, and they fit into the jar just right on the top. You just drop it in on top of the vegetables.
They're called weights. They say they're for fermenting. In other words, it's a fermenting.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And again, you don't need those. You can use anything you can, or sometimes I don't even use it. Sometimes I just make sure that they're submerged. But we're gonna actually really show you how to do that.
You can take a cabbage leaf and put it over the top and push it down instead of buying weights. That's a trick.
Yeah. I actually used a grape leaf once. I have a grapevine in my yard, and I didn't have any cabbage or lettuce in the house when I was making a ferment once and I didn't have the weights yet. So I went outside and got a big grape leaf and I made that the top of my ferment. So
I love it. I love it. So depending on how you cut your vegetable, it matters in the process, because basically it's how small or how big and how dense or how hard the veggie is matters. And we just did a little cutting presentation for you. So here are some beautiful you can make them circles. These are all carrots. So we love the purple carrots. They're just gorgeous. Here's a sliced carrot. You can also chop these into same bite-sized pieces. And then this is the shredding or the grating. And as you see there, different vegetables are highlighted differently with different kinds of chopping techniques. Play around, but if you do really tiny and really big in the same jar, know that they're going to ferment just a little bit different kind of process. The larger the area on, that you have exposed, the more fermentation that you're going to get.
Yeah.
And it takes longer with the bigger pieces.
Right.
This, the small carrots take less
Yep.
time.
Exactly.
So,
all right. So let's make one. So of course, first you need to make sure your vegetables are washed in filtered water. Make sure they're nice and clean. And again, let's say that you're using raw vegetables. Do not use cooked vegetables. It's important to have raw because they have the enzymes and the bacteria in them that are not killed off in the cooking process. You need that for the ferment to actually happen. Okay, so we cut up the vegetables, and that's how you are. And then we're going to actually do a little demo of what we're going to do. So in the jar, what you usually start with is the saltwater brine. And so I'm going to put, it's the rule of thumb is about 3 tablespoons of water per quart, but that is pretty salty. So you might want to
you said 3
tablespoons
of salt.
Right, of salt. I'm sorry if I didn't say salt. Yeah, so that's,
I might have misheard.
that's pretty salty. So you might want to figure that out as you go along about how salty or not salty you want to be. They need salt, but so I'm going to put about half a teaspoon, 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt in the jar. And we're going to, this is the brine. How simple is this? Okay. Voila.
There's your brine.
There it is. Anybody can do that. And so then we just, really, you can do it either way. You can fill the jar with the vegetables first and then put the brine in, or you can put the brine in and then the vegetables. But either way, you have to make sure that the vegetables are completely covered by the water.
We're actually mixing.
We are, with what we just told you.
What we just told you might not want to do, but we're mixing it anyway. We're on TV.
Okay. You want to hold that for a second?
Yeah.
And I have I have pickling spices, and these are called the Perfect Pickle, and they're just organic pickling spices. You can get them at any spice store and online, whatever. So I use these because I like this mix of herbs and spices. And I just put, I don't even measure usually, but I'm going to put 1/4 of a teaspoon in there. And you can just kind of mix that in a little bit and put the weights.
Want to use the spoon?
Here we go.
Can you see? You can't see. There we go. Oh,
Here.
I put too much water. Oh, is it gonna go over?
Well, it's a learning curve. We know
There we
that.
go.
No spillage.
All right.
No spillage.
Oh, a little bit of spillage.
Oh,
when we
just
put
a
the
little
top
when
on.
we put the top on.
Okay, and then you just
I was
put the
too
top on.
generous with the water.
So And you'll have different techniques from different people. Like some people say some people will cover it not with a top. They'll cover it with like a coffee filter or a cheesecloth or something like that. But in this case, when you cover it with a top like this, you'll have to what we call burp it. And that is because as it ferments, carbon dioxide is being created from the lactic acid, and it's going to bubble. And I'm going to show you that with this one that's been fermenting for the last few days. So,
Want me to go to this part?
well, yeah, I guess so. Did we? Yeah, because we went through all of that, right?
Yeah.
So just to talk about the length of fermenting too. It really depends. It depends on the cut of the vegetable. It depends on the temperature that you're fermenting at. And this is where the next slide is going to be, is to know when it's finished. So it could take 2 days. It could take 3 weeks, depending on all of those things.
Yeah.
So this jar, which has green beans and carrots, and I burped it once, and you'll see the carbonation in there, and hopefully you'll see it again. So you could hear it.
Did you hear it? With the train too.
Yeah, and I don't know if you can see the bubbles, but there are bubbles in there.
I can see them on this side.
Yeah, there's lots of bubbles. They're rising to the top. And that means, and you can hear it. Let's see. I don't know if you can hear it, but it is sound. It's like a beer. Like if you pour a beer, that sound, that's what it sounds like. That's what it sounds like. And you can smell it. It's got the spices in it. Yeah. So this ferment is actually finished because it's got all the bubbles and it's all good. So bubbling is one of the best ways you can tell if it's pretty much finished. But the best way really to tell if it's finished is by tasting it.
Can I taste one?
Sure.
Going in on a green bean. She does good.
Does it have any effervescent?
Yeah.
Yes. So sometimes they have that little bit of a carbon dioxide effervescence in them. So. Yeah. So the bubbles is one part. The smell, as we did, you can smell it. Smells a little bit tangy and sour. It should not smell unpleasant. If it smells unpleasant, it may have gone bad. So you really trust your smell. If it smells like ugh. There's a difference between tangy and sour and putrid. So you don't want putrid. So then you can, after you do this, you can keep fermenting it to make them even softer. These were pretty crispy, and if you want them to be a little bit softer, just keep the top on and keep them in a warm place.
Green beans crispy.
Yeah,
good.
So I might continue to ferment those for another day or two, just by leaving them out of the refrigerator. And when I want them to kind of slow the process, I will put them in my refrigerator. You don't need to, but by putting them in the refrigerator, it'll slow the process down considerably. They will continue to ferment, but they will not ferment very quickly. So you don't have to, you can keep them just in a cooler place or keep them on your counter if you're going to eat them regularly. They don't need to be refrigerated.
That's a nice reminder to keep them on your counter to eat them because they get buried in your refrigerator.
Yes.
So I have a question about that, because in most health food stores or Whole Foods, they always have them in the refrigerated section. So that really isn't, they're doing that just so that they don't, that they stop the process or whatever. I mean, it's not necessary. Okay.
Right, exactly. That's a really good question, because when we see it in the refrigerated section, we think that's the only way.
Right.
Okay. So storing, I think.
Yeah, we talked about that.
We just finished. We talked about that.
Yeah,
okay.
We're ahead of ourselves.
We're ahead. And so we just put together a couple of very simple recipes here. Carrots are one of my favorites. They're very simple. They're beautiful and colorful. As you saw, you get the purple, the white, the orange, etc. Just grating a tablespoon of fresh ginger and then putting that in the brine, adding it to the brine.
Yeah.
Daikon is what Debbie showed before. And if you've never tried daikon, it's a radish. It's a root.
Yeah, if you want to try that, you can.
They look very similar to, they're just a huge, big fat carrot is what they look like.
Big white carrot.
Big white fat carrot.
Yeah.
Lots of good stuff in daikon.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Wendy's gonna sample my daikon
I'm gonna sample.
ferment. And this one has been in the refrigerator for a couple weeks, so it's probably not as crispy as.
It's not as crispy, but it's tastier.
Yeah. Is it tangy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tastes really nice.
Yep. A little bit more flavor because it's been fermenting longer.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
And this one didn't have spices, so it was different from that one. So yeah,
and
I like it very much.
Yeah, all different. I mean, experiment. And again, you don't have to be a cook or a chef. You can just take whatever spices and herbs you have in your whatever might sound good and just experiment and see which does. I've tried some that didn't work out so well and some that did.
And we put dill, mustard, and caraway because those are really some of my personal favorites. That's why we shared them.
Yep. And a couple warnings. I don't really want to say warning, but I've gotten overzealous before with this when I got really excited and I bought a whole bunch of vegetables and chopped them up and made a whole bunch of ferments. And then I had a whole bunch. And it was really just me eating them because my family members aren't so crazy about this stuff. But so I ended up having way too many and they got a little bit too mushy because they were in the refrigerator for months. So they do get mushy because they do continue to ferment even in the refrigerator. And I ended up having to compost some because I got overzealous. There's also been times where I wasn't careful about the water covering them. Maybe after I've opened them and ate them and the water went down a little bit and then they got mold on the top. And again, had to compost those. So really be careful about making sure they're completely submerged. Even after you put them in the refrigerator, they need to continue to be submerged or mold will form. So those are a couple warnings.
Wear your glasses when you open your jar.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. And I think we talked very quickly today. We do have some additional recipes, resources, lots of resources that you could dive into this. And there's so many recipes and so many resources of people who've really dedicated a lot of their culinary craft to these. So please go ahead and grab your phone, click on the, what are those things called? QR codes and grab those resources. It's going to our website, so you can connect with us there as well.
Right. Check out our podcast and our blog and all that other stuff.
Yeah, but we have a newsletter and that sort of thing. So
yeah, please subscribe.
This whole thing about just holding the camera up still fascinates me.
Yes, I know.
Or anything. I mean, I'm there.
Yeah.
So I just held the camera up to the screen and I was there. So
exactly.
I'm still fascinated by that.
Yeah.
But I'm old, so.
A couple things about non-vegetable ferments too. There's a couple ones that I've done as well as I especially started during the pandemic and lockdown. I made sourdough bread. I became a sourdough bread baker. And that's something I started way before the pandemic, but I really got my skill crafted well over the pandemic time. And sourdough bread, it's also not a difficult thing at all. So it's a really fun thing to do, and the bread is delicious, and it's sort of that kind of bread where you're like, I can eat this bread and feel really good about it because it's fermented. So that's one thing.
Yeah, it's another upgrade for sure.
Yep. The other thing is kefir that I've made. Now, this is a kefir starter that I ordered online, and it's one of the resources, Cultures for Health. And kefir is a culture, and that's another way to do ferments is by getting cultures. Brine is the easiest way to do vegetables, but if you wanted to ferment other things, and you can use cultures, and kefir is one of the ferments that is you can use with water or other nut milks, other kind of milks, or regular dairy milk. So this is an actual kefir starter that's a powder. They also come in grains. The powder is more I guess it's easier to use in a way because you just put the powder in milk and let the milk sit out on the counter for 24 hours, and then it's kefir. And you don't necessarily have the grains that will continue, that you can continue with the next batch and the next batch and the next batch. This is sort of like one batch at a time. So it's a really great way to start making kefir if you wanted to, and it's delicious too. Kefir is a wonderful probiotic drink to have.
Yeah.
So, are there any questions that anyone has?
Well, I had the refrigeration question, but I think you sort of answered that. But still, is there a time frame? I mean, of how long, if it's in the refrigerator? When I looked it up, it said 6 months. I can really, because I have this particular kind of fermented vegetables that I like to get in Vermont. I'm only up there once a year, so I usually buy 3 jars. And they said that they would last, when I read online, it said it would last about 6 months. Is that, you think?
For sure, yes, they can last 6 months. Now, I said like the shredded vegetables will degrade more quickly.
Yes.
So with
Okay.
sauerkraut or something like that. But again, the colder, so if you can do it just a degree above freezing, it'll be the slowest process there is. So I would say definitely 6 months for larger chunks and slices, but for shredded and sauerkraut type things where it's really finely cut, probably, I don't know if it would last 6 months, to be honest.
Okay, all right. Does anybody else have, because I have a couple more questions. The celery and water combination, is it just half celery, half water to fill the jar up to 3, whatever container you're using,
Yep.
just 3 ounces? So it's really just a matter of how much liquid. You have to figure out if it holds a cup, a half a cup of celery juice, a half a cup of water.
Right.
Okay. Oh, and I wanted to ask you about the kefir because I definitely have a dairy reaction. I'm sensitive to dairy. So you can use the starter with coconut milk or
absolutely
oat milk. Okay, great.
Absolutely. Yep. A lot of people make some people use just water. And again, it takes the bacteria. We're breathing in this bacteria all the time, so it's bacteria is around.
And as long as nobody else has questions, is the B12, if you were to eat fermented vegetables every day, and this is a big issue for vegans, which is B12, would you get the sufficient amount that you need, that you don't get because you're not eating animal products and stuff like that from the fermented vegetables? Or how much would you have to eat? Or do you even know the answer to that question?
I personally would defer the answer to somebody else. I would defer the answer. If someone pressed me for an answer, I would say, "How are you feeling?"
Well, yeah, but you can't always know with B12. That's the whole thing.
That's right.
That's true. But if you're not feeling vibrant,
right,
if you are there, and here's one of the other things that we did want to talk about tonight, which kind of goes to your question. You probably can't just eat fermented foods and get enough. We're humans in a really different world than we were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. There's much more going on in our world. And so one of our messages to people is that, yes, fermented foods are good. Yes, getting sunlight is, an okay amount of sunlight is good. Getting proper rest is good. Moving your body is good. So it's never one thing. And our culture wants to cling on one thing.
If a little is good, twice as much is better, which is not always true.
Exactly. And maybe if you've got gut issues, you think all I have to do is start eating fermented foods and I'll be better. This is the sales pitch that people get. And we're like, let's widen the lens of opportunity for nourishing ourselves with many more things. So it's a really good question. And
see, here's the thing. This is where I really think that as a dietitian, that there needs to be an overlap between what you guys do and what community health and public health dietitians. This is a little bit of a not on topic, but this is so important for people because dietitians sometimes get really focused on the one goal and on the meal plan, and you guys are talking about integrating lifestyle, which, you know, so yeah. Does anybody have any questions besides me?
Roseanne, Sue, Laura, anything? Oh, you're all muted. I'm gonna unmute you all because we muted because there was some background noise before. So we're asking you to unmute if you would.
I also want to, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, it is recorded, so it's going to be up on the website. Your website, everybody knows where it is. If you have any additional questions, I'm sure they can contact you through your website.
Yes,
If you have any problem, and if you have any problem with that, just email me at the library and I'll forward anything to them.
Okay.
And okay, well, I guess we can stop the recording now. I appreciate what you did. It was very interesting to me, and I know a little bit about it. So
yeah.
You know.